Well, welcome everybody to our free Tuesday training. And I'm Boyd Peterson. I'm here with my partner, Jim Carroll. We're going to be talking today about unique value proposition and how that plays into a unique sales positioning. So we're going to talk about that. So do you want to bring him up or do you want me to?
I will, if that's okay.
Bring him up.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the training. As Boyd mentioned, our topic today is going to be unique value proposition and how that morphs into something a little tiny bit bigger. And I'm starting to share right now. And there we go.
There we go.
Hang on. Okay, how's that? Okay.
Well, okay, there we go.
So today's topic is the unique value proposition. And Boyd and I have, this has been something that has been near and dear to both of our hearts for a long period of time. Goes way back to, I think even before the ELP days. People in business sometimes don't understand this concept. So I've got a couple of slides and we're going to talk about the concept and then we're going to jump into the weeds, I think, pretty deep for a minute after that. The question that we need to ask is, what is your unique value proposition? And that's identifiable a couple of different things. And what is your target market is kind of the first question that I want to ask. And a lot of business people struggle with that idea. I think both Boyd and I, as we've been coaching or teaching over the years, have asked people, what is your value? What value do you bring to the market? Who's your target market? And Boyd's got a great story. I'll let him jump into it about a guy that had an epiphany right in the middle of one of his classes.
Right. So there's a couple of things that I've found with this is you've got to understand what your target audience is. And so one of the things that we've had is we had a gentleman who we were doing he's an HVAC company, and we asked him, who is your target people? He said, oh, anybody that's a homeowner. Wow. Okay. That's a lot of people. How do you target to them? Well, we're just running the ads and we're not getting much results, but we may be getting 1%, during the cold season when it gets really cold, or 1% when it's really hot. And then going, well, okay, let's find out what your great customers say about you. And so I sent him off with some questions to ask, and I'm going to give you a few of those questions. Some of those questions you may go, what do I need to know that for? And I'll explain. But here's the thing. I asked him to ask, what is it that made them want to use you over your competition? And so he started asking this question, and he came back to me and he says, oh my gosh, I thought it would be price. I thought it would be, and he named off 3 or 4 things. And he says, it wasn't any of those. It was my reviews. It was, and he named off 3 things that he got from 20 different people. All of them gave one of these 3 things. Well, that gave him a unique value proposition, because now instead of saying we're a low price leader, well, they didn't really care about the price. They didn't care about some of the other things. One of those things from the reviews was that he was there on time. That was one of the big things. And everybody in their internet reviews said that. These guys are right there on time. I've had people that were, 4 hours late or didn't even show till the next day. These guys were there on time. In fact, he guarantees it. That was one of his big things. And he didn't realize that was as big as it was. The second one goes along with price, but one of the things that he found was that people loved that when he gave them a price, that was all they're going to pay, because he wasn't the lowest price leader. He was somewhere up above the low cheapy person. But the low cheapy person, once you got them in your home, they'd start taking things apart, and then they'd say, oh, you're going to need this as well, and you're going to need that as well. And by the way, we're up to an extra $1,000. Not with him. he guaranteed that whatever price they give you, that's it. Nothing more. There's not going to be anything more. And if it costs them more because they missed something, he picked up the cost. So this was something interesting. Now, another thing that we had him ask was, why do you keep coming back to him, and do you refer him? Absolutely. I come back to him because of these things. I trust this company. Trust, that's a big thing. You don't have know, like, and trust, you're not going to get great customers to keep following you. But then also, when they started asking about how many people they were referring to them, one guy, he's what I call a fanatical. He says, I tell all my neighbors every winter, every spring, they need to call these guys to get their furnace checked. They need to check their air conditioning because they do a great job and they're on time. And I know that they're not going to charge me for something I don't need. That's a big thing.
Well, that all kind of is a description of the second little key point here. The first one, of course, is identifying your market. The second one is you have to have the ability to explain what makes you different.
Yes.
All of those things that you mentioned, it's always ironic to me that the owner considers, price as the single point. And rarely is it really the issue. It's the ability to be on time, or the ability to make a commitment on pricing, even though you're not the cheapest. So it's having the ability to describe what makes you different is absolutely important. And then, of course, the next one I was going to jump on, but did you have something to say?
I was just going to say there's one other example that is really a good one as well. I was working with a dentist one time, and I kept asking him, what makes you different? What makes you different? What is your uniqueness? And he just said, I'm a dentist. I fill teeth. I put, pull teeth. I do bridges. I do. And I said, there's got to be something that makes you unique. A lot of people are coming to you. What is it? And he just says, oh, there's nothing. But about that time, while I'm sitting there talking to him about his ads, his secretary walks in, the scheduling secretary for him. And she says, hey, your last appointment is at 5 o'clock. He just called and he's up in Brigham City. He's not going to be able to make it till after 6 o'clock. But his tooth is really killing him. What can you do for him? He says, oh, just have him call me on my private cell phone number and I'll come in and I'll meet him. But have him call me about 5 minutes before he's going to be at the office. And she says, okay, thank you. And she leaves. And I said, what's that about? And he says, oh, well, I tell my customers, if you have a tooth that's a problem, I'm going to treat you like it were my dad or my mom, your family, when you come here. And I said, well, that makes you unique. He would come in, and he was telling me, he one time came in at 12:30 at night because someone had woken up with a tooth that was abscessed and needed it out. And it had been hurting a bit, and he had an appointment in a couple of days, but it was so bad he couldn't sleep. And so he got up, got dressed, went into his office, met the customer there, got him all taken care of, because he treats all of his patients like it was his mom or dad. Isn't that unique?
That's a great description. I remember an ELP meeting that we were having up in Davis County, and we were talking about this unique value proposition. And the meeting was maybe halfway over, and we got to a certain point in the meeting, and we were describing a target market and an explanation of what makes you different. And then when we got to the part where what does your pain point does your product solve? And this guy just sat there quiet, and he just says his eyes just opened up, and all of a sudden he was understanding that he'd never described any of those things. He didn't know who his target market was. He doesn't know what made him unique or different, and his product didn't necessarily resolve a pain point at that particular time. And so he took the extra steps then actually resolve a pain point, and he became very, very productive. So that's
very cool.
Yeah.
Oh, and you brought up the one about pain points. That's the big thing, is what is the pain point, for the, all of those three are pain points. Now, of course, you think, oh, well, yeah, the tooth one, of course. When your heater goes out and it's the middle of December, there is a guy here in town who he will tell his people, just do whatever it takes to get the appointment. Now, if I don't make it there by 4 o'clock like I normally do, we'll make it there in the morning, but that'll be okay. That won't be okay for the customer who's sitting there freezing at their house, waiting for them to show up.
Absolutely.
And that's what this other guy does. He comes when he says he's going to. So if he says it's going to be 2 o'clock, he's there right at 2 o'clock. And he says, I always leave a little bit of room in between. And if I have to move an appointment, I'll call them personally to see what I can do. But I will not miss a person. And I'll work until late at night to make sure their heater's working. That's commitment.
That's solving a problem right there.
Absolutely.
So having the ability to do that is great. And the last little mark or flag that I put there is, what does your company stand for? And it's kind of an esoteric question, I think, to most people. But really, what does your company stand for? What does BP Media or E2 stand for? And I like to think that it's quality and service and all of those types of things. Boyd, what do you think that we stand for?
A lot of people put together what is called vision statements or mission statements. Those are a lot of times, those are the things that companies stand for. So if you have a mission statement or a vision statement or both, because they are different, they are very different, a mission and a vision. So mission is what you're doing now. A vision is where you want to go. So understand that. And then do that. Make sure that your customers and all of your employees know that. So, and it's so important to do.
Absolutely. So I threw together just one slide kind of example of what a unique value proposition is. And I'm going to run through it pretty quickly, and then we can come back and dissect it a little bit. But let's just assume that somebody wanted to be, they have this passion for transportation, however you want to describe that. And so they want to be in the transportation business. And so the first thing that obviously comes to mind is that, okay, you're going to build a skateboard. You're going to, build something, plank with a couple of, wheels, 2 sets of wheels on it. And all of a sudden you're in the transportation business. We're going to call that a skateboard. Then let's say it evolves into something more complex. Let's say a bicycle, and the bicycle has a chain and some gears, and all of a sudden you're getting more complex, and that evolves into a motorcycle, and which has a motor now, and you're starting to really get into the transportation industry. And that evolves into a car, let's say, and you've got doors and an air conditioner and a stereo, and then all of a sudden that car becomes an electric car, and then you've got add all the accessories, and it just really kind of gets out of control. And I know that we both know a couple of people that started with the best of intentions in the transportation industry or whatever, and it quickly became out of control, and they had to rein everything back in to their core product or their core value proposition before they could really be successful.
That's true. And so one of the things with all of this is you've got to decide exactly, again, who is your customer? And, I had someone, I was teaching a class last Wednesday or Thursday, and we were talking, it was a guy and I, and we talked about who is your persona? Who is that perfect customer for you? And so one of the things I was talking about is, did you know McDonald's has a perfect person? And whenever they're talking to that, to their general advertising, they're talking to that one person. did you know that they're 34 years old? They're a woman. They have 2 to 3 kids. They drive a minivan. They're buying a house. And they have 9 more things besides those that identifies exactly that person. So when they do something, they know exactly who they're talking to, and they know what they want. Now, here's another example, though, with McDonald's. When they released their McRib, which they just did, they then have a different persona for that. And now it's somebody who is 44, generally men, like the outdoors, whether it be working or recreation. They love to be doing things all the time, and they love really good food with good flavoring. Now, there's more to it than that. But the key is they know exactly who they're going to talk to. And so when they're talking to that woman, they're not talking to him about the McRib. They're talking about what's important to them, which is their kids, the play place that they had. Now, this was pre-COVID. They've probably changed it since then. But, having the play place, having a place where they could go and relax while their children were able to play. And they got food that was fairly good. And in fact, McDonald's in talking to, McDonald's in talking to some of these people realized they wanted more nutritious food. So they had it so that there were options. Instead of getting soda, you could get milk or chocolate milk. Of course, chocolate milk is kind of, some people say, oh, no, that's still bad. But you have a choice. And you have a choice between fries, or and then they had, in some areas, they had orange slices. In our area, it was apple slices. And so they had options for them. And they listened to their customer, that perfect customer, and arranged accordingly. So that's the thing. And that's part of going into that sales positioning. And so you got to know who your customer is. Who is that perfect customer? Mm-hmm. And if you don't know, because everybody who eats is not your, yes, that sounds good, but you can't get to them. You can't say enough to get to that wide a variety.
In one of my classes, I remember, a student saying, oh, I asked him what type of business you were in, and he said, well, I own a restaurant. And I said, oh, what makes you unique? What's your unique value proposition? He says, nobody is my competition. I'm the only person in like 100 miles that makes, blah, 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 Turkish food. And I said, well, you know what? Everyone is your competition. McDonald's across the street is your competition. My mom is your competition. Everybody that knows how to cook is your competition. And he really believed at the time that he didn't have any competition. That was his unique value proposition, which is not the truth at all. McDonald's, whether you like them or not, actually is a marketing machine. They have all of the demographics down. They know who to talk to. They know what food to push to every customer. Like you said, the McRib or the Happy Meal, they are on top of it with their value proposition. So let's talk now, or let's migrate a little bit into a unique sales position.
So, one of the things with all what we're talking about is once you understand what your customers are all about, who your perfect customer is, and what they are looking for. Right here, we'll go back to that slide, the second one. Nope. No, one before, one after, right there.
Okay.
One of the things with this, if you've identified your perfect customer, that's your target market. Not how big, it's down to a narrow niche. Then when you find out how they like to be talked to and what they find is your uniqueness, what helps them want to buy from you rather than someone else, now you start understanding the sales positioning message. And the sales positioning message needs to be something that's going to grab the person you're trying to go after's attention and let them know that you understand their pain points, or you're solving something that they really had a problem with, or maybe not even pain or problem. Maybe it's sometimes you have something that they really desire. But that's the key, is knowing exactly what your customers are looking for and being able to express it. Now, I got to tell you, one of the best things we've ever found is if you're in business already, go look at what your internet reviews look like. Now, if they're all great job, I love how they do the work, throw those all away. I want you to find the ones that are stories, telling others why you're the best for them, why they chose you over over your competition. And then take that story and distill it down. Find 5 or 6 of those, 10 or 20 is even better, and look at them, and you'll start seeing a thread of this is what people love. That's what we did with that HVAC guy. And now his message is much more about we're on time or you don't pay. And the second side of that, when they're doing it to a little younger set. Now the older one, that or for an older set, they have that one, they go to 55 and homeowners, and they're living in older homes, and they've got that persona down. The one that is, you'll get exactly what you're going to pay, that's for a younger set. And so they've got 2 different messages going on. They don't always run them both at the same time. In fact, I don't think they ever do. They run one for 6 months, and then they'll run the other for 5 or 6 months, sometimes winter, sometimes summer. They alternate it around. But that other one is for a younger set because they're on a strict budget. Now, sometimes the older people are too, but the younger ones are really on a strict budget, and they don't want any surprises of an extra $1,000. And so that's what they go after. They talk about, we're so sorry to hear that so many of our competitors are doing this type of thing. And then they'll describe it, and people are going, oh, yes, I've heard of that guy. Oh my God. And he says, you'll never pay anything more, not one dime more than what we give you a quote on. We won't be the cheapest one, but we will not charge you for anything you don't need. And if we miss something, we pay for it. They get a lot more business from both of those messages to those 2 types of customers because they know that that resonates with them. And that's the key. What resonates with your perfect target audience?
That's great. And what we're evolving into in this conversation today is now that you know your target, you know what's painful to them, you can absolutely focus your message. You can make that a unique selling proposition.
Yeah.
So your sales proposition is on target with the right audience, and there's a couple of side effects of that. One of those side effects is you get more work. So you become more profitable because you're targeting the right audience and getting more work and landing that deal. So your selling proposition becomes profitable, and that's why we're all in business.
Yep. One of the other things I get a lot of people say, well, then I'm limiting myself. It's too narrow of a niche. And can I tell you, when you're talking to just that one person, it resonates with them and all others that are just like them. By the way, there's others listening in, and it will actually go broader as you tell that message to that one person, because it says to that person that's listening in, he really knows their pain point. And I have a pain point too that's just about like it, but maybe it's not quite the same, but I like the message he's got for them. I want to use them. And so you'll end up getting a wider market when you talk to a singular person.
That's perfect. And it's easy to duplicate and find more people like that. So that's the whole point of narrowing in on the target, narrowing in on the message. Now you're able to duplicate that message in multiple formats. And I know that Boyd's fond of the newspaper format, but maybe, now we're all more fond of social media. Or, I guess what I want to say is that you can expand your reach with social media. And that's the advantage today, is that we're all on one or two different channels, and you can find those people. But I'd like you to mention real quick demographic. I mean, everybody just figures, oh, they're going to be on Facebook, and that's not always the case.
True. So that same company I was telling you about, the HVAC company, when we were talking to, we wanted to find out where people hang out online. And by far, it was Facebook. 73% of their customers said they are on Facebook at least once a week, and 65% of them were on every day. So that told us, oh, goodness, that's where people hang out. But the next question we asked them told us a different story. Do you pay attention when you're on Facebook? Is it kind of the thing? It was, where do you look for information about an HVAC company? And then we let them talk about it. And interesting enough, it wasn't Facebook that they actually were paying attention to when it came to an HVAC company. It was Instagram, number one. It was Pinterest, number two. It was YouTube, number three. And then finally, but a far distant down from the YouTube, was Facebook. We started asking them a few questions in addition to find out why, because we had not run into this very much, but now it really resonated. And we started asking why. And they said, because when I go to Facebook, I'm there to talk to my family and friends, and I just ignore almost all ads.
Mhm.
With an exception, we found, as we started asking them about other categories of companies, if it's a very personal product or service, then they paid attention more to it on Facebook than they did, more than they did for the HVAC guy. But here's the thing was, so restaurants, the hair salons, the nail salons, even mortgage companies fit into that category that worked really well with Facebook. But auto repair shops, HVAC, all kinds of other things that were not very personal was always somewhere else. And Instagram was the number one that we kept running into, but it moved all over the place. For instance, auto mechanics was again a lot on YouTube, and then Pinterest jumped in there quite a bit when it was, and we knew that it would be in the top 5, but it was always in the top 3 or 4, depending on the interest. Now, restaurants, Pinterest never even appeared on it because it's ultra personal. But you know what? Facebook and then Instagram was number 2, right next to each other, very close for that. So just things to think about as you're starting to put your message together.
You know, I think I'd mentioned this to you a little bit earlier in the week. But I read something recently, and recently, like this week, that women make somewhere between 75% and 80% all the buying decisions in a home, which I knew it was more than a man. I didn't ever figure it would be 80% of the buying decisions. And so everybody should, consider that when looking into their target market. If the women are making all the buying decisions, and regardless of whether it's an auto shop or a furnace repair place, that's who you really need to talk to. So craft your message accordingly.
I hadn't mentioned this to you, but on that HVAC company, we found that 74% of the women make the decision on who to go with on an HVAC.
Yeah.
Auto repair shop, it was almost 50-50, but it was slightly ahead by men.
Mm-hmm.
Only because women assumed that men would know better.
Exactly.
But when you talk about a restaurant, it's very heavily women. When you talk about a lot of the things that are out there, it's a lot of times if it's a household thing or something to do with the household, it's definitely women. So it was interesting to see some of those statistics that we got from that. We did more than one survey. We've done several now. And so it was interesting.
Awesome.
I wanted to tell one more thing is once
Okay.
you've got your sales positioning statement that's unique, then you need to make it into what used to be called a headline. But trust me, you don't want to use it as a headline. Headline is kind of a statement. I want you to do what is called an interrupt. It's how it's going to interrupt them. And so it's got to have a piece of that problem in it when you put that out. And so, for HVAC, that might be, uh, have you heard of companies who are overcharging when they get in on the lowest bid? Okay, something like that is grabbing their attention. Then the next thing, so you first you take and get them so that they're interrupted and they say, yes, what is this about? Then the next section is you engage them and you tell them that you've got a solution for that problem. Then you educate. You tell them how you're going to solve that problem completely. And that is, if we come in and we give you a bid, you're not going to pay another dime. If we're not on time, we're going to not charge you for your service call. Those kind of things are very strong. But by doing those three things, then it leads to the fourth one, which is having a strong offer. An offer doesn't have to be a discount. It just simply has to be an offer that means something to the customer, not to you, to the customer. And with that, then of course, you never put your logo at the top of your ad. Always put your logo at the bottom of your ad, because they don't care who you are until they've gone through those 4 steps. And now they want to know how to get a hold of you.
Good point. Good point. And it's nice, we're starting to talk, about schematics a little tiny bit. Having the logo at the bottom of the ad, of course, they have to read down through that. It just draws their ad or their eye that way. So those are all great tips and certainly good information about. Now we all know about how to shop for a furnace.
So go to Instagram. You'll find it all there. Yeah. Or Pinterest. It was interesting with that HVAC company. The difference between Instagram, Pinterest, and YouTube was only like 2% between each of them. It was no more than 5% from the number 1 of Instagram and number 3 of YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 5% difference. Facebook was way down. It was like 25, 30% less people than any of those other 3. So it's interesting. Don't always think that what you think is the right thing is not always the right thing. Do some asking of your customer and find out what they think about you. Find out why they use you and why they, one other question we asked, and this was a very good one. It was, what would you love us to offer as well? Mm-hmm. And we had this HVAC company. Very few people said they could come up with anything, but every once in a while, we had people who said, can you help us when we have a swamp cooler? The swamp coolers are being discontinued all over the place. I don't think you can even buy them anymore. Maybe, I don't know. I've never tried to, but that was one of the things that people wanted to know, how to swap out their swamp cooler for an air conditioner. And so they started doing a whole program about that. They also put together a program where, here, this is how to maintain your swamp cooler each year, how to set it up, how to, winterize it, what you need to do so you're not getting a big draft down that tube during the winter, things like that. But what did it do? It's drawn people in so that when they are ready to make that move from a swamp cooler to an air conditioner, who are they going to call? The people that helped them.
Exactly. Well, I think that's all I've got today, Boyd.
Well, thank you. I don't have anything more that I think we can tell you about to your unique value proposition. The thing is, what sets you apart? Make sure that's what you're doing. You've got to make sure that it is something unique. And now occasionally you'll get something where you and 2 others might have it, but there's a field of 20 or 30.
Mhm.
Go ahead and plant that seed that you have that unique value, because those other 20 don't. And even though there might be two others, that's okay, because there's probably plenty of business to go around,
Yeah.
depending on your business. So
You know,
anyway.
I've got a question. As far as polling your customers,
Mhm.
you do that always on Facebook, or where's the best place to poll your customers?
So I've had some of my customers use Facebook to poll people, but the best ones for my customers is I give them a challenge. I give them the questions to ask for their specific market, and I have them assign someone in their office to call. The reason why is on a Facebook survey, we were only getting about 4 or 5%, and those were only the ones who were the highest of, yeah, we love you, they're the fanatics, or something along that way. But when we call, we were getting 85 to 90% would answer the questions. And then that gave us a much broader look at everything. And it was one or two of those that we found that they wanted, here's something we'd like you to have in addition. And that helped.
Mhm. Awesome. Well,
So,
that's all.
Yep, go ahead.
I was going to say that's all great information. And
Yep.
when we were talking about it, I was thinking, if the answers vary so wildly on Facebook, how do you get great, valid information? And that answers that question.
Yeah. So one of the things is, when you even doing an email survey or doing it, some people send out Survey Monkey or something along that lines. You're still not going to get more than 5%. And it's usually the ones who are either very interested in giving it because they either love you or they hate you. And they're very willing to give it on either of those two extremes, but
Mhm.
not much in the middle. That's why calling your customers will get you a much better look at why people hang out with you, why they used you, why they chose you.
Perfect. All right. Well, I think that's a show for today, guys.
Okay.
And look for us next week at the same bat time and bat channel, and we will have another interesting topic. We'll talk about
Right,
it this week.
Robin.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much.